Hello, what is up, guys? It's your boy Ray, Four Corners, back with another episode. I'm joined just the boys today. I'm gonna introduce my fellow basketball knower, resident of Homer, Alaska, Bucket since '88. How's it going?
What's up, Ray?
Are
Yeah, pretty
you?
far away, but happy to report that I wore shorts and a t-shirt today. It was in the mid 60s, so we're not struggling yet.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm struggling here. It's 95. Hey, Grace, 97 degrees or something. There's like five fires. So I'm a
Oh
little
dear.
envious. Are you in that phase where it's daylight for 20 hours a day, or how's that working?
Yeah, it doesn't really get dark till like 11:15, 11:20 out here.
Interesting. That could be fun. It's good for a night out.
It gets kind
Well,
of weird though.
I can imagine. A little tough to sleep. But let me bring in our third member of the trio today, the three-man weave. Um, Coach CT, knower of many draft prospects and resident of the New York area. What's going on?
What's up, Ray and Peter? Glad to be back with you guys. Appreciate
Happy to have you.
the coach shout out, Ray. That's feels nice to say that. Nice to hear that. So appreciate you guys having me on, and great to be back.
Yeah, I'm excited to catch up with you guys. I feel like it's been a while. Not too much has happened. We're in that sort of period of the off season where, between now and preseason, we've got about 10 weeks or so. And but that said, we happen to be on the fourth of every 4 years. So we have Olympic basketball to talk about. We've got some summer league to react to, and we've got some final additions to the roster, and both in Russell Westbrook and Spencer Jones. So I'm excited to hear you guys' thoughts about that. And if you don't mind, we can definitely get into it, maybe chronologically. CT, since you've been gone the longest, give me your thoughts on just how you felt about some of the summer league performances from the Denver Nuggets, and who stood out to you in a positive and a negative way, and maybe who kind of left their stock at neutral.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of interesting now that we're kind of a little bit removed from summer league, so can kind of have all of our kind of thoughts in order. And definitely, I think Julian Strawther was the main standout for me after 2 games. I think he showed a really great increased willingness to be aggressive on offense. He was relentless attacking the paint, drawing a ton of free throws. I think he was like one of the leading scorers after 2 games in summer league as well, which is pretty bodes well, moving forward, that he's putting up volume, but also is aggressive, in that aspect. Like that he had the ball in his hands a bit more as well, making a little bit of reads out of pick and roll. And, it was hit or miss at times, but still good to kind of show that ability. Yeah, Grace, we'll talk about Trey right now. Yeah, Trey Alexander was another standout. For me, I was funny enough, I actually was on, wasn't a game, speaking about Trey once they signed him before summer league, kind of giving a scouting report. And, I saw Trey play in person multiple times. I was lucky enough to, to scout a lot of the Big East this year, just because, I live in the area. So, I thought Trey was pretty underrated, especially that he went undrafted. And he looked great for the Nuggets. I think he looked like, with the Nuggets at this point, you're looking for guys who, you can win with on the margins, right? And it's good that the Nuggets kind of found another guy, in Trey, that I think, obviously was a couple game summer league slate. So I'm not going to say that he's a hit right now, right? But I think off the bat, it's still encouraging that he went out there and he produced, shot the ball really well. Thought defended his position, pretty well for the most part. 6'4", 6'3", with 6'10" wingspans, pretty impressive. Making pretty good reads out of, being the primary, ball handler. His shooting was great. Was able to get to the mid-range at will. Was able to break guys down off the dribble. So pretty impressive from Strawther and Trey. I thought those guys were great. So do you guys want to get to the negatives, or?
No, actually, I do want to stick on them for a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about those two, both of them kind of had opportunities to play maybe audition for that backup in if not backup point guard, maybe backup lead ball handler type of role. Obviously, Trey being on a two-way, I think that makes it a little more. Obviously, he's more of a point guard, more of a natural, ball handler than Julian Strother is. But at the same time, Julian is going to be on the roster on a night in, night out basis, and Coach Malone definitely seems to really have taken a liking to him.
Yeah.
How would you compare those two when you think about just on a night-to-night basis in the regular season? Are you more interested in seeing Julian step into that main ball handler role long term, or did Trey Alexander do enough for you to say that maybe you can just keep him as a regular, if not taking a roster spot? Because I think maybe we can talk about that a little bit. It's probably a negative for a certain other point guard on the roster, but at least be a regular call up.
Yeah, no, I think with Strawder, I don't think he's a pure point. I did say this on the timeline though. If you did, I'll link you guys the link. If you guys watched Julian Strawder play in the U19s, he played for Puerto Rico, and he did play a lot more on the ball. I think I might have sent it to Grace, showing her those kind of highlights of him. Strawder played a lot more on the ball, making reads at a pick and roll. Making pocket passes, things like that. Like, he has the ability to do that. Like, we saw that with Jokic this year. He had ability to hit Jokic in the pocket, rolling to the rim, backdoor cuts. He's pretty good on ball, like off ball mover as well. So I don't think he's a pure point necessarily, but I do think, we saw this year a bit. He played in like non-point guard lineups. He was like the quote unquote point guard with Christian at times with Jokic. So I do think he has a little bit more on ball equity than what he was billed at Gonzaga. So I wouldn't mind seeing him get a little bit more, on the ball reps, whether that's in preseason or we see that in some of the early games in the season. But I think he's primed for like the backup two guard role going into the year. With Trey, I think with Trey is he's going to have to be. I don't think Trey is a shooting guard. I think he's going to have to be assume a lot more on ball usage if he's going to stick in the league, just because of the height. He's a bit slender for his size as well. So I'm a bit concerned if he's going against bigger guards, shooting guards, say you're like 6'5", 6'6", he's going to get knocked off his spot a lot defensively. And I think at the point of attack with his wingspan, I think it makes more sense from that aspect. And, as you guys know, like playing with Jokic is, you don't really have to be a pure point, right? If you could run pick and roll, if you get to the mid range like Jamal does, you're basically passable in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Trey gets third string minutes this year after Malone's comments about him. And Malone was basically saying that he's a fan of Trey, like his first summer league practice, which is pretty funny. So I wouldn't be surprised, if Murray missed a couple games, I'm sure we'll get to him later. I wouldn't be surprised if he steps into that backup role and kind of, assume some minutes there.
So, Peter, how about you? Do you have any thoughts about the comparison between either those two, or even now that we know that they've performed well in summer league and that they both kind of have made a good impression on Malone, maybe where that leaves a Jalen Pickett in the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with CT. Like, I liked what I saw from Julian. It actually kind of bothered me a little bit when that report came out that Strother might be like the backup point guard or something. I guess Malone's comments got a little bit out of context there, but to me, it's like you got to be good at what you're supposed to be good at first before they can expand your role. Right. That's just my opinion. So, I mean, I thought he was okay in the minutes he played last year. Obviously, we know he didn't shoot the ball well, but I think we all think he can. We're not going to use a half-year sample size to be like, oh, this guy can't shoot. Because I mean, CT, that, as you know, that adjustment from college line to pro line is a significant one. If you look at most guys' careers, they don't start off shooting like 40% rookie year. That's pretty rare. So yeah, it was good to see him play well. I'm excited for Julian next season. I think he's gonna play a lot, and I think it's gonna make more sense to keep him in the second unit because they need scoring punch, and also like the way he plays I don't know if the starters would be cool with him like playing with a lot of minutes with them the way he kind of jacks it up. You know, he like Christian Brown being low usage. We always talk about how he needs to like shoot more. I actually don't mind the fact that he doesn't really want to step on toes. Like, yeah, we want him to be aggressive, but we also don't want Christian Brown like taking 15 shots a game. That's not his game. So I think Strother is perfect for a bench role. You know, get his rhythm, get in there. You know, he'll have some games where he'll be able to swing it for us, and I'm looking forward to it. And as far as Trey goes, you know, I think CT, you and I were both pretty high on the signing
Yeah.
before we even saw him play in summer league.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I knew he was going to be good, but I also can't say I'm surprised. I mean, everything we said he was good at, he proved to be good at summer league. So I think the most encouraging thing was two things. One, he wasn't afraid, you know, which is in stark contrast with the other backup point guard that we're going to talk about. And two, I felt like a lot of the shots he made were tough shots, you know, very translatable to the NBA. Because, you know, the first thing people always say about summer league is like, well, it's not real basketball. It's not going to, you know, just because you play well in summer league doesn't mean you're going to play well, you know, in the NBA. While I understand that, I didn't feel like he was getting lucky. You know, I felt like he did stuff that translates. So we'll see if that's the case or not. Obviously, I don't expect him to be like in the rotation or anything. He's a two-way. But, you know, like you guys mentioned, I do think that if somebody tweaks an ankle for a week or so and he's now got to be the backup point guard, I'm excited to see that. I'd feel pretty confident that he could get those minutes.
That's fair. Can I, not to quote you, but part of me feels like I'm not totally out on Jalen Pickett. I'm not saying he's gonna play. Is he like the guy or anything? But if there's one thing I will say about what I just saw is that it's not real basketball. And in the NBA, I think the kind of player that Jalen Pickett is, he almost reminds me of like he's more like a Vlatko, more like I don't want to say like a Jokic, but a guy whose skill set, to the extent that he has a skill set, is not well served in summer league. So I'd be interested to see, you know, even just in preseason, even in just like the early parts of the regular season, you know, looking at those three guys. You know, you talked a little bit about record scratch, or Grace also mentioned in the comments that, you know, record scratch possessions where guys, you don't want to step on toes, you don't want to take over and dominate a little bit too much. Jalen still feels like the most scheme friendly, I'm just going to run the offense kind of a guy, where Trey, I think, and Julian, they have that pop, you know, they can take over a unit, but like, to what extent do the Nuggets need that? I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, but Ray, what I've heard this take before. What Tell me what he actually does well, because everything you're describing to me is the same excuses people made for Facu. Like, if you can run the offense but the defense knows they don't have to guard you, it just makes it easier for the defense and makes everybody else's job harder.
That's another part of it, is like his shooting percentages, and can he shoot or not? Can you leave him alone or not? Facu as a 0 level scorer, like that's
Yeah.
There is no place on the court where Facu can score, and you saw that in his unwillingness to shoot. What I saw from Jalen feels not like an anomaly in the sense that I'm sure I'll never see that again, but I think to some extent he could play a lot better. He could shoot a lot better.
I would hope so.
I would hope so too. And we saw, you know, to talk about another guy from Summer League, and maybe we can transition. I'm not saying he will. This is not a lock. He's not my guy. He's not Bol. You know, he's not like there's some latent talent here that, like, if they just unlocked it in a certain way.
Not even 15 minutes in, got a Bol reference in there.
Not even 15 minutes.
Proud of you.
But what I'm saying is, compare, for example, other Hunter Tyson last year to this year. I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like last year, Hunter Tyson looked like one of the best players in summer league.
He's a Michael Jordan.
Confident. He looked like, and
he was first team last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a dominant scorer that can score at all three levels, can get to all the spots that he wants to get to. Defense was always his question mark, and I think it was still a question mark for him in summer league. But he just didn't shoot well in this set of 3 or 4 games that he had with the summer league team this year. And so to that extent, that's the thing I keep in mind is that it's only a handful of games, and a percentage that a guy shoots in that context is not necessarily the percentage that a guy will shoot in a more professional context. That's all I'm saying. I'm not. I still have him third in this conversation that we're having. I'm just not. I think he'll get another shot. It just he has an uphill battle to climb for sure. I don't think Malone likes him.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
appreciate Ray being the contrarian to the Jalen Pickett
Somebody has to.
kind of stuff. For me, I think what summer league is kind of, if you're in a second year player and he averaged like 3 points a game on like really like bottom level efficiency, and I think that's kind of like damning for your career if that's the case, especially if you're a second year guy in summer league. Tyson, the same thing. He was really bad as well, I thought. I think he had some games where he kind of showed a little bit of like offense, maybe shooting the ball and, coming off a movement, things like that. I just don't think those guys are – it'd be different if these guys were on two-way contracts, but they're on fully guaranteed deals, which is the problem. And it's taking 2 roster spots away from veterans that could potentially help the Nuggets win a championship. And that's where the Booth criticism comes in, that he kind of really tried to sign all these rookies to a contending roster, which I'm actually, as a draft guy, I'm okay with him having 4 of those guys on the team. I'm very okay with him having Holmes, Strawther, Brown, Watson. I think that's the limit, like the absolute limit you could have. But he took it a step further, and now he has 6 of those guys on the team. And I just personally don't think Pickett and Tyson are NBA players, especially for a contending rotation too. And that's the point of like where we're at right now. And it's just tough because, like, would you rather have Jalen Pickett on the roster right now or have Dennis Smith as a potential third string? Or would you rather have Alani Walker as a third string? And that's where it's kind of like, this is the problem now. I'm sure we'll get to it with the Russ discussion.
Mm-hmm.
The Nuggets, like, if Russ can't play in the playoffs, the Nuggets are like, they're probably cooked because they don't have anybody else to be the backup, unless we're talking about Trey, but he's not even on a full-time roster spot because, Pickett is taking that spot and Trey can't play in the playoffs. So I think it just kind of leads into like a more broader discussion about like the roster construction and the pitfalls of like having unplayable players on the team at this point. And again, it's early enough to like not write them off, but I do think we have a decent enough sample to say that these guys are not contending level worthy players, even after a year and a half of play.
I do. Oh, Peter, do you have any thoughts about those two before I go in?
Yeah, I mean, mostly just that, like, they were both bad, but Tyson being bad was more disappointing to me because I didn't really have much faith in Pickett. Tyson was good last year, and like I mentioned last pod, I feel like his role is, the one excuse I made for Pickett was like, I feel like he's in a tougher spot. Like Tyson just has to be a small forward, shoot, defend, and rebound. And he didn't do any of those things at a high level in summer league. So I don't really see what the upside is for him.
Yeah.
At least with Pickett, you can make the excuse of like, he's a table setter point guard. He needs better players around him. Well, Tyson was just playing with a table setter point guard in summer league, and he didn't play well. So, as weird as this to say, I think I might be more out on Tyson than I'm on Pickett. I mean, to be clear, I'm out on both. Right. It sounds like you are too, CT.
Yeah,
but I don't know. They both have a very like uphill climb, and we have so many forwards on the roster now that I don't really think Tyson's going to get a crack anytime soon.
No.
So I might be a little bit inverted in that way. I would be ready to, if you told me that tomorrow they cut Jalen Pickett and they gave Trey Alexander that spot, I'm totally cool with that. Like the point guard rotation is already pretty thin anyway. I don't feel like Denver has that many shooters or guys who could be shooters. And on a team that is really thirsty for that kind of skill set, I I have a little bit more like he was so good last year and he was so bad this year. I'm willing to like, hey, maybe that was just a bad setting for you. Maybe talking about him having a table setting point guard. Your table setting point guard did not play very well a lot of the time. Can you just shoot better sometimes? I think if he's a one skill player and he's at the back of your roster, maybe I could cope. I guess I'm just a little bit more okay with that, especially with not having Deron Holmes this season. I think they're a little bit more thin. But PJ Hall played well. I'm kind of higher on him also, so maybe not
Well,
optimistic.
well, Ray, I will say real quick, just one thing to like, I guess, make an excuse for anybody that plays poorly at summer league is what do we always hear? These guys have what, like 5 practices together, if that, before they're asked to play for a team. And like, the truth is, they say that setting is better for guards. So in that sense, it's more alarming for Pickett. But CT, it's even more like a setting for like bucket getters, right? So the Nuggets don't really have those type of players, and they try to draft guys that are like to fill in a role and to play team ball. So when your whole like ethos as an organization is to play unselfish, good chemistry basketball, that's not going to happen in like game 1 and game 2 of summer league. So I guess it's still possible that Tyson could be okay because at least he's been in Denver for a year and played with the main guys like in practice. So he knows like when he goes into the game what's expected of him. And he doesn't really have the type of game that's going to be like stand out at summer league, even though he did last year. So I don't know. Maybe he was just off. Maybe you're right, Ray.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm out on both guys. I'm probably more in on Tyson than Pickett. Um, but yeah, like Grace said, we need more me guys. Like that's where I think Lonnie comes in. Where if you saw him on Brooklyn, like he was just chucking. You know what I mean? He was putting up a shot every time, like really aggressive score. And I think the Nuggets need that off the bench. Like they
Yeah.
need another guy like that could shoot. Need another player that could kind of put pressure on the defense. And kind of like running out of those guys at this point. And I think now we're at a premium where like roster spots are at like really valuable up and down the roster with Holmes' injury. So like that's for me where it's like I would have waived Pickett, and it's not just the summer league performance. Like I was lower on him as like scouting him through the draft, and in that way, and I don't think like the we've kind of talked about it too. Like I don't think the penalty for like waiving a guy like him is severe with the apron.
So small.
It's minuscule, right? So I mean, it's like, would you rather have him or a vet that could help now? And I think that's where like a lot of the criticism comes in. Like I said with Booth, it's like, can you have any more veterans that can help compared to all these rookies that are on the team? And I just think at this point, like getting more vets, even that be like a 1-year audition, still would make more sense than just keeping guys on the roster who basically we saw now. Like, and again, I get it, like trying to give them a shot, but there's no in the title window. There's kind of no room for development and like making that many mistakes as a player.
I don't know if I want all those guys. Not all of them, but like insert random point guard here. If you told me he's going to take 12 shots a game off the bench, or Julian Strawther is going to take 12 shots a game off the bench, I know Julian Strawther isn't a point guard, quote unquote, but I almost feel better about giving that to Julian just because he's hopefully a part of the team and a better long-term investment. And I mean, it's the same thing with like Russ. I don't want to see Russ take 12 shots off the bench either. I don't think that's going to be fruitful if that's the tier of player we're talking about. I'm not super jazzed, but I think they'll be better than last year. I still feel that. I'm still even.
I agree.
I'm not saying, for example, that like PJ Hall is good, like he's gonna storm the league and become a double guy every night, but I think you could throw him out there for a night where AG takes a night off, or Michael Porter takes a night off, and you just need another 4 or something. Like I think those kinds of guys, they could fill in. They're not. It won't be Zeke level bad where you're playing through a guy who just isn't very skilled. And even I think Zeke is a guy who I could find the role that fits him, which I think lines up more with maybe his rookie year where he was just playing defense and offensive rebounding and just staying out of the way. That's what I'd like to see him get back to, and maybe he can now that hopefully, fingers crossed, he never has to play center again. But yeah, I mean, talking about summer league takeaways, Peter, do you have any other like final thoughts? Maybe we can get into the Russ discussion edition. It's a little weird. I'm still not used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was pretty much the only summer league notes. I mean, I wasn't quite as high on PJ Hall as you were. I thought he I mean, they did play through him a lot, which was cool, but I thought he could have hit the glass a little better. I think, you know, when it's somebody's first summer league, I do think there's a little bit of adjustment period with like the athleticism. So I'm not out on him, but I did think he was going to be a little more ready for it, being like an older player. But you know, he'll have time in training camp, and he'll probably get a lot of run in the G League this year. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I guess ready to transition into the signing we knew we'd heard about for weeks. And then the Clippers, they finally trade Westbrook to the Jazz in the Chris Dunn sign and trade. Jazz cut Westbrook. Nuggets sign him to a vet minimum. And it's been such a fascinating month. It's been like a long time since we've heard this rumor, and there's so many different takes out there. And now that I've had time to have it settle in, like I guess I've always been pretty high on it, mostly just because well, one, I don't really have a choice. Like I'm a Nuggets fan, so let's go Russ. But I think the thing that makes me the most like feel okay about it, Ray, is that Jokic wanted this from all reports, right? So if this was just like a Nuggets don't really have any moves, this is like our last option, let's see if this works, then I'd be a little more like what's going on. But if Jokic is pushing for this behind the scenes, I think that's a really good sign. And I've heard multiple smart people say, they don't like it, or they think it's a bad idea, mostly like Legler and Zach Lowe, which definitely, like, I understand the points they made. And, mostly being it always ends badly with Russ. So I do get the concerns, but I think if you break down his career, you really do have to go like situation by situation and say, why did it not work? And I'm going to go with the last 2 stops. Okay. So I never understood why the Lakers traded for us in the first place. I mean, they have LeBron James, who's one of the greatest players of all time. You're not going to take the ball out of his hands. Westbrook isn't going to be good off ball, and he wasn't, and it was a disaster. He goes to the Clippers, and he plays a little bit better. That first year, he was pretty good there and played pretty well for them in the playoffs. He started to adjust a little bit. He was like, good cutter, getting rebounds, offensive putbacks. He was helping them a lot. And then this year, I think what happened was, Kawhi gets hurt, and Paul George was kind of also, in and out of the lineup and up and down. And I think Russ just looks around and he goes, like, he knows James Harden. He knows he's an all-time great, but he also knows, like, James isn't really about it in the playoffs. If there's one thing you can't say about Russ is that he's afraid of the moment. Like, he's always going to give you his all. And so I just think that he approached last season's playoffs as like, well, I want to win, so I'm going to go for it. So, yeah, he didn't play well, but at least he like went down firing, so to speak. So I totally understand why people like don't like his style or say like, maybe this guy can't work in the playoffs. I think he's finally going to a team where he's going to have a healthy respect for the best player and for the coach. that he's going to try to fit in at least a little more than he has. I'm not saying he's going to be like a completely new player. I don't think they should expect him to either. I think they should try their best to form the bench around him. Give him 4 shooters, which they can do, by the way, with Saric. So I'm excited for the bench lineup. And I will say, if this was like 5 years ago, I'd be a lot more concerned because I feel like Russ, would still be in that like MVP mindset, and Moch wouldn't have quite as much cachet. But now it's in a place where he knows he's at the end of his career. He knows he's going to a team that has a championship coach and players that have won a championship. So I feel like, while I'm not saying it's going to be a home run, I do think that this will be like the most bought in that Russ has been in his career. And I will be shocked if this goes terribly. It might not be a home run. It might not be great, but I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I think at the very least, he will be like a nice boost of energy off the bench and help the Nuggets.
If I'm honest, I think Russell Westbrook is the reason that Russell Westbrook has never won a championship.
Okay.
Valid.
And so that being said, for me, it's what are you asking him for? One of the things I didn't love about last year, and I think we can all agree on this, is that we asked Reggie Jackson for a lot. And I think that was hard for him just in terms of the burden that he's carrying. And also, as you continue to grind through a season in that way, you almost lose that sort of pop, that energy, that ability to do the little things that you were doing early on in the season. I really like Russ at his potential as a utility player, as a Bruce Brown sort of supplement. I think he can fit well with Jokic because he's still athletic. He's a guy who I think he can run the floor. He can be a great outlet option for Jokic. That would be fun. And similarly, I think Saric and Vlatko, those are guys who can find him on the break. They can play with a little bit more pace. I think that'd be good for the team. I also would like to see him managed in a way kind of similarly to the way they managed Justin Holiday last year, where I felt like Justin Holiday had a great playoffs in large part because they didn't ask a lot of him throughout the year. So that's just my hope. I hope he plays a managed role, give him a few nights off here and there, play like 60 games, something like that. And by the time you get to the playoffs, he's still able to put in the energy to being a good cutter, a good screener, a good rebounder, all the things that would make him useful. And just, I'm not going to say no middies, but like if he can continue that trend of maturity that you've been talking about, Peter, where he is a little bit more conscious, self-aware, I think he can be a good influence on the team. And that might even be more important, is just being a good influence, being a good sort of can he be the Vegeta to Jamal Murray's Goku in that way? Can he push him as a guy who he respects? We know Russ is going to be in the gym every day. He's going to be putting in the time, the work, the effort. He's going to have a good, positive attitude. That's everything I've ever heard about him from players and from other coaches and from other teams and other situations that he's been in, is that he's one of the best teammates I've ever had. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever been around. So I think that can only be a positive thing for Jamal and his, I don't even want to say development because he should be peaking right now, but making sure he is the best version of himself. That's basically it. How I feel about him.
With I think you guys made some great points. I think with Russ, regular season wise, I'm not nervous about it because I think what he does with the bench is going to be helpful. Pushing the pace, being aggressive, getting to the rim. I think that's all going to be helpful because the Nuggets just didn't have that guy last year, right? Reggie was a guy who was taking pull-up threes and hitting shots in the mid-range and couldn't really get deep into the paint. Albeit the bench spacing was pretty bad looking at it now. But I do think with Russ, and it's a reason why I'm so high on the bench now, it's not like too high, but I'm higher on it than I was last year, is that they have yeah, that's partly true. But a lot of the reason why I'm higher on the bench this year than last year is because the bench makes more sense offensively. Sarge at the 5 is I wouldn't say a mismatch, but he's a guy who can stretch out opposing centers to the 3-point line. He could take bigs off the dribble a bit. He's a really good passer for a guy his size at 6'10". He can attack closeouts as well. So I think you can run some inverted stuff with Russell screening for Saric as the ball handler. And so the reason why I'm high on Vlatko is because, and again, I wouldn't say it's hypothetical because the year before he played really well, in the rotation and he made an impact. The thing with Vlatko that I like is that the Nuggets, if you look at their front court last year, right, MPJ was the only floor spacer they had. Not playing Holiday at the 4 because that's not his position. But if you look at MPJ, Watson, and AG, MPJ was the only floor spacer they had. So if you, like in that Timberwolves series, right, if you had the bench spacing, or not the bench spacing, but the starter spacing, right, even at times then, like the Nuggets couldn't generate enough offense to win. And I think with Vlatko is that he's a guy who could shoot the ball. He could make quick decisions, as a guy who can pass the ball. Has positional size at 6'8". He's built pretty strong. And I just think that was a skill set the Nuggets were missing last year off the bench. Like they didn't have another like physical wing who could shoot. And I think he could shoot. And that's why people were in my mentions the other day about Zeke Naji playing with Dario. And I was like, do you know how bad the bench spacing is going to be with Russ, Zeke, and Peyton Watson out there at the same time? That's going to be horrible. So that's why I actually like the lineup now. If you kind of go with Russ, Strawther, Watson, Vlatko, and Sarge, I think that makes a lot of sense where you have Peyton as like the defensive anchor for Dario. And I think Vlatko's a pretty decent defender. Hopefully we'll see his ACL progress, as he came off the surgery. But I just think that lineup makes a lot of sense. And to maybe just conclude with the Russ thing is like, I like the signing for the regular season because they need a guy who's, going to push Jamal, I think, as far as, in practice and I think Russ is going to make Jamal better as far as, bringing out the competitiveness in him. I think the fit isn't as bad as people are making it out to be, although you need a lot of spacing between them. If you play MPJ at the 4 and you play as like a Strawther and Russell and Jamal, I think that makes a decent amount of sense as a lineup potentially. My problem with the Russ discussion is the playoffs, as we just saw with the Clippers. Like he was like really, really bad. Like he was basically benched at the end of that series. So, and then we look at the roster construction again. If Russ is benched in the playoffs, who do they turn to? They don't have anybody else. Because that's Piggy's the third string guy, and you're not going to play him in a playoff series after what we just saw in summer league. So that's my worry is like that he just doesn't play well. But I think with Jokic, he's in the most optimal spot where offensively he could maybe get away with it in the playoffs. And I do think the Nuggets have enough shooters as far as like if you really want a lineup to have spacing, you can. MPJ, Strawther, Vlatko, and Jamal. Like those are probably your best shooters that you got. And Jokic when his wrist isn't cooked. But that's really that's the bottom line there. But I think overall, I think Russ makes the bench better than it was last year. And I think he's going to make it easier on a lot of guys because of his ability to get to the rim and put pressure on a defense, which was kind of lacking last year. And I think he's a better defender than Reggie too, which is another noticeable difference. He's not like a great defender, but I think at this point in his career, he's kind of honed in on being a good defender and taking pride on that side of the floor. So I think that's
better rebounder too. I feel like that's also, an ancillary part of defense, which is nice.
Definitely.
Yeah. Ray, I want to add a couple of more positives that he brings. Russ has always been known as a super energetic player that always plays hard. I think we're going to steal a few wins this year on nights where like a lot of the guys don't have it and Russ is just pushing, and it's especially going to be advantageous playing at home. He's going to get acclimated to the altitude and he's still going to push on the break, coming in for that second unit. And some other teams are just going to be like, I don't really want to run with this guy tonight. And then the other thing, CT brought up the work ethic, Russ always being in the gym. Jokic has the same reputation, which is good, but I think Russ helps there with the leadership because it's like, okay, if those guys are always in the gym, now you have two examples of leaders of guys who are, always getting in early, doing the right things, which is a good example. But what's interesting to me is like, as good of as an example as Jokic is by leading quietly, I think Russ is sort of a different personality. He's kind of more vocal. I could see him like pulling Peyton aside and Christian aside and stuff like that and having more leadership that way. But also just the fact that he's a guard. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember the conversation years ago about how like Steph Curry is so popular compared to maybe like a LeBron because it's more attainable, right? This guy's like he's not built like a monster. He's like 6'3", it's like, I could try to model my game after him. I think Russ being a point guard, I'm sure the other guys on the roster probably look at him more like, if this guy can reach that level of player, being like more normal size, then, I should step my game up versus like, you can watch Jokic work out and be like, I'm never going to be that, and I'm not saying Jokic is like the most physically imposing player ever, but it's like Peyton Watson and Christian Brown can't work their ass off and become 7 feet tall. So I just think it's a little bit different when you're around guys that are like your position that are really good because like you said, it could motivate Jamal. I think that's the big hope here. And that's honestly, if we're going to go negative at all, I know you touched on some of the negatives already, guys, but my biggest concern is like, what if him and Jamal don't vibe? That would kind of be like my biggest concern because that Westbrook is going to come in and challenge you in practice and try to bring the best out of you. So I just hope that he pushes those buttons in the right way and it does bring the best out of Jamal. And I honestly just don't know how that relationship and how that dynamic is going to work.
As long as they're winning games, I feel like that's always a good lubricant in terms of just personal relationships. So
yeah,
I'm not too worried, but if it does start to cause some conflict, if they I can paint you a picture of like worst case scenario. Michael Malone is playing Jamal and Russ at the same time to close a game or something, and Russ takes a midi at the buzzer and obviously breaks it, and Jamal is just looking at him like that's my job, and that kind of thing. I could see it, but that's multiple things have to go wrong for that to happen. And there was also, I can also paint you a picture of like a game-winning lob from Jokic to Russ or something, or even doesn't have to win the game. Late in the third quarter or early in the fourth quarter, where they actually, again, they're playing with pace. They blow some teams out, and Russ can be that emphatic. Also, I take slight offense to you saying that people can be like him. He's my size, and I cannot do what he does. But
you're also not in the NBA.
Yeah, fair enough. I just, yeah. Oh, well,
you can bowl better than him.
That's true. That's fair. So I think it's like it'll be okay. Moderate thumbs up. I'm optimistic about it.
Ray approval.
Yeah, I think the bottom line where it's that's going to be the deciding factor. I think. Can he play in the playoffs? That's the big regular season. I have no doubt. I really don't. I just think you're less schemable in the regular season. Playoffs is where I think it'll be the issue. But if Jokic can make it work, maybe he could.
It could always be Julian. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, maybe that is what it is. Maybe that is what it's going to be.
But don't you guys also think that it's just going to be good for Russ to finally be on a team where like the vibes are better? Because I know like that's always a big sort of discussion in Nuggets Nation is like, the vibes weren't as good this year. Well, it's like I think they're kind of going to be ready to flush last year and turn the page, But the last couple of teams he's on, it's been pretty toxic. I mean, the Lakers, that's the fishbowl, and then because if you're LeBron's teammate, it's like unless you're the main guy or LeBron, it's like you're in trade rumors constantly. And then the Clippers, they've been a sideshow for a long time. It's like they're just not a very competent franchise, even though they've had good players. So I think Russ going to a situation that is more stable will be good for everybody.
Yeah, I believe that. Speaking of LeBron, Team USA is pretty good.
Yeah.
It is a little. I don't want to say it's cheating, but it's a little frustrating to watch. I was at a bowling tournament the other day watching the USA Serbia game. Super excited. I was like glad they put it on. Jokic goes and steps off the court. They're up 5. 5 minutes later, they're down 5. Like it's really. I've never seen a team that has inspired more opposing loyalty than Team USA. I'll say that. Um, I don't know if there's a historical example of something like this, or if there is. I don't even want to say it's the personalities. I mean, I know Joel Embiid's on the team, and everyone is critical of him, and people are critical of Jason Tatum, and all these sorts of things. But uh, it really feels like it's just like not fun to root for. Even though, I mean, plenty of people are like, go go US. And I get that, but I don't know. I've been having a fun time just kind of emotionally investing in teams like Serbia. Teams like I like the South Sudanese team. I've really enjoyed watching them play and seeing like the impact of Luol Deng on that sort of organization, and just seeing them like, oh, they've taken that next step forward. Where down the line, teams like them, teams like Japan, with some of the players that they've added, being a little bit more competitive. France being, I understand they maybe being a little disappointed, but interesting nonetheless. Um, I like international basketball. It's fun to see some of these guys just kind of get a different kind of opportunity, and hopefully one day um, the world evens out a little bit more when it comes to some of these competitions. I mean, look at Canada. Canada is another team that has a really deep roster. So I'm curious for UCT, like, how are you enjoying international basketball in a Nuggets context, or otherwise, in terms of like what you're seeing, what you're paying attention to, what stands out?
Yeah, I've actually been enjoying the Olympics as a whole. I've really liked the volleyball; has been cool. The swimming's been great. See like Chase Buttinger kind of go from NBA player to volleyball player is like a pretty cool transition. Uh,
Mhm.
you have to be like insanely talented to do that, like to play two sports, and especially now like competing on the world stage for the Olympics. That's pretty impressive. Um, but yeah, for the basketball, I mean, I've enjoyed watching it. I've enjoyed the game with Canada the other day. I think Shea's been really good for Canada. Like even RJ Barrett's had a good Olympics as well. Um, and yeah, with USA, I mean, I just think that there's so much, like head and shoulders above the rest of the field that it's going to take like a really good effort from some team. I don't maybe it's Canada, maybe it's not to try to beat them, but I just think that with the talent they have, it's just too good. Like even like Steve Kerr the other day, he like benched Embiid and Holiday, and he put in Tatum and Anthony Davis, and like the team still didn't matter. You could just cycle in players, and you could still beat teams by 20 points. So,
Yeah.
you have your constant
Odo,
on
they
and
downgraded to Bam Adebayo. It's terrible.
yeah, Bam, he was great last game against South Sudan.
Hmm.
But yeah, they just have guys where it's just like keeps the onslaught keeps coming, right, with the bench and the starters. So I've enjoyed it though. It's been cool to see like how other teams play. Um, the ball movement, the cutting, things like that is always something I like watching when it comes to basketball. More of a team game. So um, yeah, it's been cool. I've enjoyed it.
Did you have any thoughts about Jamal's Olympic run so far?
I think a lot of it's been and I'm not like a Jamal I know like a lot of people are like Jamal, like guys, like they really go to bat for him. But like I've always been like, yeah, I think Jamal's a great player, and the Nuggets wouldn't be the team they are without him. I just think like at this Olympics, like it's just like a tough context because he's like so far away from the player he's with the Nuggets. Like he's playing off the ball. He doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot. Doesn't have Jokic out there, and I'm not calling him a Jokic merchant, but at this point, like he's adapted his game to play with Jokic, right? So, and I don't want to excuse it because he's not playing well. Like bottom line, he's not playing well. A guy of his stature should be playing better. But yeah, hopefully in the coming games he plays a bit better. But I don't think it's like an indictment of him, totally at this point. Like I would still offer him the max deal or the near max deal. But yeah, I mean, he had an interview the other day where I don't know if you guys saw it, where he was like, I'm just trying to fit in, and it's really good of the country and the team. So like, I guess in that aspect, that was kind of encouraging to hear at least.
Yeah. Peter, do you have any thoughts about Jamal's run so far? Is there a what would you need to see to feel like good about him going into the season, or does this? It is a different context, but does it worry you at all?
No, it doesn't matter to me one bit. Team Canada is full of mostly NBA players, but if you look at the roster, they're mostly full of guys that aren't very good passers. Like, I don't know about you guys, but watching Canada play is kind of a slog. They win a lot of games on just like athleticism and offensive rebounding, but they don't play like pretty basketball. So it's not really surprising to me that Jamal can't catch much of a rhythm, like you mentioned, playing off ball. But I mean, I hate watching Dylan Brooks play basketball, guys. I'm sorry. It's
Can't do
rough.
it, huh?
Well, he's like he you know how we always say how some guys are like, we used to say this about PJ Dozier. He's like 10% more thirsty than he should be. Dylan Brooks is like 50% more thirsty than he should be, like as a basketball player. And I guess sometimes he has good games, but Jamal, I like the fact that he's not pressing. He's not forcing the issue. He's just kind of like, okay, I can kind of chill here and hit a shot every once in a while, and we can still win. So, if they play the U.S. down the road, they're gonna need more from him. But I think he's biding his time. We've seen this from Jamal before, where he can kind of like muster it up in a big spot. So there's been a crazy amount of overreaction to how he's played so far, and I'm just like, guys, it's Olympic basketball. It's 40-minute games. He's not even starting. Like he's getting, bench minutes. You can't expect him to thrive in a situation that he is not used to being in. So that doesn't bother me at all. But Ray, you said something interesting at the beginning. You were like, you sense a lot of people like not maybe rooting for America that are American. I kind of sense that too. And my main theory is I think it's because the way the NBA is covered now. I think everybody that doesn't win is like labeled a fraud all of a sudden, or like, oh, let's just hate on this guy. And I also think a lot of it has to do with, the NBA marketing strategy is so much like player centric that there are a lot of people that follow the NBA that just kind of root for players versus teams. Maybe, I know we're Nuggets fans, but
I said all the Westbrook stands in my mentions.
Sure. But I just think that like when that happens, people have their guys, and then they just sort of don't like everybody else. So I'll be honest, and it even happens with me a little bit. Like if MPJ or AG were on the team, I'd probably be way more into it. But there's no Nuggets on the team, and they have like Devin Booker and Joel Embiid on the team. So of course I don't want those guys to do well. But I'm not like rooting against America, but it is like a weird dynamic. I'm like you, Ray. I enjoy myself, watching some of these other teams.
That's kind of the thing with Jokic, though. Like if you see like a lot of the stands of Jokic, if you see online, MPJ and Jamal had the bad playoff games. Like the people, those people were like all in on like trashing the teammates of Jokic, and it's like these helped Jokic win a championship. Like that's they deserve a little bit more respect than that. Especially
Right.
look at Jamal and Mike, guys who came back from debilitating injuries to come back and make a mark on a championship team. I think those guys deserve a bit more respect, even though you know yes, they're on max deals and they should play better for sure. Not absolving their play, but if you really think about it, like those guys, really fought to come back, and it's kind of, stinks to see them getting a lot of the slanders, especially Murray this summer. He's gotten a lot of flack going from the playoffs to now. Like I've never seen it been this bad. Whether
I
that's
agree.
supporters or fans of the team.
I think part of it is sports narratives also lag behind reality a little bit, almost by like 6 months to a year and a half, sometimes like that, where even me, I felt like I was critical of Jamal for a while, and at the same time, I'm looking around, and I'm like, guys, okay, it's not great. My concerns are not assuaged. At the same time, I'm definitely willing to give him that leeway to say, okay, let me see what you look like in another 10 weeks, when you do have at least some amount of a break and you can come back and you get to play with Jokic again. You get to fit into the same old familiarity. And maybe this is even a good experience for him where he appreciates that a little bit more. And he can bring some of that sort of he's got reps in a context that he isn't really familiar with, so maybe he can be a little bit better. He can be a little bit better off ball on the Nuggets. Maybe he can be a little bit better creating for himself without Jokic, and maybe that is going to be a positive, even if he doesn't always look good, a learning experience for him. And same for Jokic. Maybe it is unfortunate that he is having the kind of the same, it's almost like that same LeBron narrative of get this man some help energy, which we kind of thought would not be the case. Although, again, we're talking about playing the USA. I think that was really like where the peak of that was. But because you compare Serbia to Canada, or which I'd also be really interested in see that game, Canada versus Serbia, Jokic versus Jamal Murray. I think that would be fun, but seeing them compared to some teams that are more normal for an
Who would you
international
root for
context,
if that matchup happened?
Serbia.
Okay.
It's not close. Sorry. I mean, Jamal, I love you, but Jokic is kind of my hero. And well, I mean, I hope it's fun. Like I think I would prefer Serbia to win. And I think they might have a better shot. I like watching them play more. They might have a better shot at beating Team USA. Jokic is also, I think there's a bigger pressure for him to win that medal for his country than there is for Jamal. I don't think people are looking at Jamal and saying, you got to win a silver for Canada or else, in the way that the Serbian community really feels that yearning. I think we can all be reasonable about beating the USA, but at least silver. I think that's a good expectation for them to have, and it would mean a lot for him, I'm sure, to do that for his country.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Jokic, I mean, it seems like a lot of like for Serbia, they really they take it very seriously as far as like the Olympics goes. And I remember like when he didn't he skip the Olympics or he skipped something, and they were like really against him for a while. So I think they really kind of take that serious. But I don't know. I'm rooting for the USA. Maybe you could boo me if you want, but I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that like all the greats are kind of yeah. Listen, I'm rooting for Jokic, so I hope Serbia makes the medal game. That'd be cool, and Canada too. Like I think that'd be a great game to watch. But I think it's kind of cool that like the U.S. has like their last kind of hurrah here with LeBron, and like this is LeBron's last Olympics for sure. Curry probably this is his last Olympics too. KD, maybe you could squeeze another one out of him. I don't know about that, but probably not. I would say. But I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that we're kind of seeing like the last of the, redeem
a generation.
they call it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and LeBron is showing out. Like, if there's points of criticism that I have for the U.S., it's not on LeBron. Like, he's doing everything that he can and looking. It's historic, really. I mean, I have always said I hope to be like an old man Hooper, but he's doing the old man Hooper thing at the absolute highest level in a way that, I mean, we can have that conversation later down the line of like who's the greatest of all time or whatever. Maybe we've done that before, but he's making a strong case for just his, like, how good he's been for how long he's been that good.
Longevity.
It is, yeah, it's crazy. I just hope I'm in the YMCA at 39. Like, so, yeah. I'm excited though. I'm interested to see how that how the medals stack up. I'm low key. I kind of, if I could get like a Japan bronze or something. I just like that team. I think they're so scrappy. They're so fun to watch.
Didn't
but
they have
yeah,
a 10 guy guarding Wemby? Was that the game or no?
5'5", yeah.
He was
yeah,
like 5'5".
He's 5'4". He's
Wow.
5'4". Like, he is tiny. He megged him. He megged him once on the inbound, and I was, it's just, he got it. It's like Faku, but he's good. No disrespect.
Oh
to-
man, RTG is gonna come for you.
Okay, I'm not that online. It's fine.
Hey,
I
I have one
Mhm.
last question about a player at the Olympics for you guys. Are you guys worried at all about Steph Curry? Is he declining, or is this just a matter of them not playing through him?
He's definitely declining, I think. I think we saw last year a bit, like him decline. And he doesn't really have a second co-star, which is also
Right.
problematic. Like, people are saying, Jokic has no help. I mean, look at his top four, at least. Murray, MPJ, AG. Still a good top four. And that's why, for me, I have an article coming out soon where it's like I still bet on those guys to be good when it matters and good where they can compete against any team in the league.
Mhm.
And again, I think with the Celtics, as we saw, like, deserving champions for sure, but look at their road to the finals. I mean, they play teams that were missing stars and everything. So I think next year, if you kind of look at the Knicks retooled a bit, look at the Sixers, even though Embiid's a fraud, and we're seeing in the playoffs, not the playoffs, the Olympics, he just has not been good for the U.S. I just think his game doesn't translate well to the U.S., like to the Olympics for some reason. I don't think, you know what I mean?
He
Like,
knows that. I think he was in
knows
an
it too,
interview
yeah.
saying like, "Oh yeah, what parts of this experience is going to translate back to your NBA game?" He's like, "Nothing."
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
get it.
DNP last game, right? He didn't even play, I don't think, for
Right.
against South
Yeah,
Sudan.
Kerr didn't like the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Kerr's taking a lot of criticism, but he's coached a pretty good 2 games so far. I mean, he has all to lose and nothing to gain really by what he has as far as the coaching is concerned. So I think he's done a pretty good job of that. Kind of gone with the matchups that he thinks are good, even though Tatum didn't play well, but at least he kind of tried it out to see how he fared. And but yeah, I think it's been interesting though. It's been interesting to kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah, and I think we could all, playing for Cameroon probably would have been the best thing for him, for Embiid, like long term, in terms of just respect that he gets. Because I think it's just been international basketball has been a bad PR run for him in general. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe he can go back. I am not sure. I don't know what he should do.
What's gonna happen if like they're in the gold medal game and Embiid gets benched and literally plays and they win? Is it gonna be look like similar as like Durant's championship rings? Like, oh, you didn't earn these, bro.
There's nothing he can do at this point. Whether they win or whether they lose, it's just not a good look for him. If I'm being honest, there is no winning. He's put himself in a position he's got to sleep in the bed he's made.
You would think like the matchup would be if they play Serbia in the gold game, like he could kind of put pressure on. We've seen Embiid have success against Jokic on offense for sure.
Yep.
But the thing with the USA is they're not going to play through Embiid in the post. If you have LeBron, you have Curry and Booker, like you're just not going to play through Embiid against Jokic. That's like a bad kind of it's like a bad kind of strategy. So they rather kind of go with like the Bam and AD types where they could kind of just play as good defense as you can, but put pressure on you the other way. Not needing the ball. So I don't know. We'll see. But he definitely hasn't been a good Olympics. But like we said, I don't think his game's tailored really for the international game either.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the flopping. But yeah, this has been. I mean, it is what it is.
The foul bait on Jokic, though. Did you see that one play where he tried to get the foul bait on Jokic, and the ref just looked at him? It was the funniest thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I hope the NBA is watching these games and thinking about what people really appreciate about international basketball and taking some notes on those things. That's all I'll say on that part.
Can I want to agree with you, but can I counter you really quick?
Okay.
Did you watch the screens that Sudan was setting yesterday?
Some of them, yeah. Okay.
I don't think the NBA wants their superstars getting like crushed.
I mean, but you also know me, so it's like
you want more physicality. All right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I'm the type of guy who goes on YouTube and watches those like brick wall screens, but they only get more devastating highlight videos. That's the type of
I didn't know those highlights existed.
They do. Steven Adams is on a lot of them. Yeah.
Nobody respects a good Steven Adams screen like Ray.
No, they don't. But yeah, this has been fun. I do want to keep us, within a reasonable time frame. So as we kind of wrap up, CT, did you have anything you wanted to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah, no. Thanks, Ray and Peter, for having me on again. I always enjoy coming on, talking, Nuggets, Olympics, whatever with you guys. So appreciate that. Yeah, I got a Nuggets article coming out. It's pretty soon. Just kind of like going over some of the offseason stuff, maybe some summer league notes. Just kind of want to say a little more about like what I think the configuration of the roster is at this point. So be on the lookout for that. I actually do have a draft article coming out down the line too. I've been writing a little bit. So I got that coming out probably a little bit more toward like September, October. Yeah, I've been in my writing bag a bit. So
in the lab.
Yeah, I've been
getting it in early.
Yeah, so just be on the lookout for that.
I mean, this should be one of the better drafts that we've had in a long time, right?
100%. Yeah, 2025 is going to be stacked.
Yeah, so
and you got some pretty good players in your backyard, right? Doesn't Rutgers have like a big time recruiting class?
I'll be at a lot of the game scouting this year. I'll be posting some footage, some pictures of being there.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, Rutgers got they got two guys in the top 10, actually top 5 projected.
And I'm sure Patino's getting some players at St. John's now.
Patino, yeah, St. John's got a couple good guys. Kadari Richmond from Seton Hall. It should be a good game when he comes back to Seton Hall. So I'm looking forward to that.
Sweet.
Yeah, no. Rutgers gonna be a good team. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they play this year. But yeah, stack class with Cooper Flag at the top. It's gonna be fun. Should be a fun college year. Looking forward to it.
It's gonna be a lot of tanking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Capture the flag.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
And Peter, I'm sure you have. Yeah, I would love to hear any adventures you have from the Alaskan wilderness, or I don't know what goes on up there, but you let us know.
I haven't seen any bears yet. I did see a wolf on the side of the highway when I was driving in the Yukon on my way up here.
That's something. I feel that. I'm glad you made it.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, these are not basketball related things. So maybe you're interested, maybe you're not interested. Doing a book review. I read a lot of sci-fi fantasy novels. So if that's something you're interested, check out my website or my Twitter. I'll keep you posted. They may become videos eventually. I also make bowling content. If you're interested in watching me bowl or strike or how I do in my tournaments, things like that, check me out at Ravon Hackshaw on YouTube, or just throw me a like for algorithmic support. That is always nice.
They got to get right after USA bowling. Is there bowling in the Olympics?
No, unfortunately, bowling is not in the Olympics, and they did not make the cut for the LA Olympics, which is unfortunate. But
wow.
There is a sort of like worldwide. There is a like worldwide bowling events.
A Super Bowl of bowling.
World Cup. Yeah,
World
there's a
Cup,
World Cup
alright.
equivalent of bowling.
They got to get right.
Yes, and for me, I'm joining the PBA this year, which should be fun.
Wow, congrats.
For me to get on staff or basically get sponsored by a bowling company, something like that, I don't need it, but it is helpful if I have a strong social media presence. So, throw me a sub. It always helps. I appreciate all those things. I just threw my first perfect game a little over a week ago. So that only took me 25 years. So I feel like I'm on a hot streak right now. And,
wow.
Yeah. So anyway, if you've made it this far, we really appreciate you listening. And you can find me online pretty much everywhere at Ravon Hackshaw. You can find Peter at Bucketsons88, and you can find CT at CTphasio24. Definitely check out his article and Peter's Wilderness Adventures and my bowling stuff. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. I can end the stream effectively. We'll see.